Welcome to the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your dedicated parental alienation coach, here to guide and support families as they navigate the challenges of high conflict divorces and custody battles. On this podcast, we'll share insights, practical strategies, and hope for those on the journey toward healing and justice. Whether you're personally experiencing these challenges or just want to learn more about the complexities of parental alienation and custody disputes, you're in the right place. You are not alone. This is the Fractured Families podcast, where every voice matters and every story is heard. And if you find my conversation helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us reach more families who need it. Thanks for joining the Fractured Families podcast. I'm Charity, your host. I have with me today Jeff DiDomenico. He's an alienated father of his 4 children from Arizona. He's going to share with us his alienation, how it started, what the courts have done to actually create the situation where it's even harder to see his kids, the lack of support. And Jeff, thanks for joining the show. And why don't you get us started with your challenges in spending time with your children and the separation from their mother?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of this, and grateful that you're doing this sort of thing. I think it's very much needed in society today. So thank you for having me. I am a father of 4 children. I have 2 boys and 2 girls. My oldest son is 14. I have a 12-year-old daughter, about to turn 10-year-old son, and a 7-year-old daughter. So from 7 to 14 is the age range of my children. I've been a very active and involved father. Was in a relationship for 25 years and married for 14 of those. And as the relationship started to deteriorate, even before that, I started to lose any sort of parental rights and authority in the home. The children, if I tried to discipline them or parent them, they would look to their mother to see if she approved of what I said. And it would be a 50-50 coin flip if she would back me up on it or not. And simple things like bedtime, or whether they should eat their dinner or get dressed and participate in chores, any simple things. So I started to notice that, and in a lot of ways, I relinquished a lot of that authority and control to her. There's a motto that was common in my home. You may have heard before: happy wife, happy life. And unfortunately, that was kind of a premise that I operated from, which leaves out a lot of feelings of the other parent. So we ended up having a physical altercation that was heavily involved with alcohol. And because of that, I think we started to have to really reevaluate a lot of things that were going on in our relationship. I started counseling, led me to understand really a lot of the cultural trappings that alcohol involved in the marriage. We started in counseling, marital counseling, and the marital counselor at one point asked us to address the drinking, as in like go to a 12-step program. And I was all for that. I had already been evaluating alcohol in my life. And out of the blue one day, 3 weeks later, she just turned to me and said, "I really don't think that's the problem." And from there, an unwillingness really to address any part she had in what was going wrong in our communication just turned towards her finding the one solution, the one problem for everything going wrong in her life. Her unhappiness, or how she felt unhappy, was attributed to me. From there, she started to just make up stories. She would take half-truths and distort them, and that became something that, she told the court system through a divorce process. And at one point, we had a mutual friend who reached out to her and was able to kind of get to her better conscience, for lack of a word. And about 8 months into her filing for divorce, she wanted to reconcile, and it seemed hopeful. And she had gotten an order of protection out, and we went to the court to have that removed. We had been seeing each other, which is directly against a court order of protection. But in all reality, she's not scared of me. She doesn't have any sort of safety issues. She was happy to see me. And the court removed the order of protection very reluctantly. But the judge, who she clearly has some ulterior motives, was unwilling to withdraw the dissolution of marriage, which is what the divorce is called in Arizona here. And I can't quite understand why, except they're motivated a lot of ways financially. you can tell. And the court system works with high lawyers and high priced lawyers and really want them involved. Everything costs money, from the therapeutic interventionist to everyone involved. Here in Arizona, unfortunately, judges' retirement fund is funded by a small fee on child support. So they certainly are motivated to make as many divorces go through as possible, because it will, each one increases their retirement fund. She did not allow that, but for a couple months we were trying to work it out. And I started to have, after not seeing the children for over 6 months, in November of 2023, started to try and reintegrate myself in their lives. Proved to be really quite difficult. At that point, I realized I had lost any sort of authority, ability to be a father. And I was a very involved, active father, coaching t-ball and baseball and football for both the girls and the boys. And I really encouraged them to be active. My wife, in her substance abuse issues, withdraws. There's a familial aspect to it. And the more I've been through this process, the more I've learned out about alcohol. It's very insidious and overpowering in a lot of ways. And there's a generational component to it. Certain ethnicities are also predisposed. And she's kind of unwilling to address all of those issues. And within that, she secludes herself, she withdraws, and the same for the children. Doesn't really let them participate in activities outside of the home. And so in the last couple of years, I've seen the children are no longer involved in outside activities. My two oldest, who went from being student council presidents in their elementary school, have withdrawn from their involvement in student government, and we're A students, AB students now, have D's and F's, both of them currently. And unfortunately, the schools play a role in this too. They don't necessarily want the kids not to move on. So there's a no child left behind policy. And I recently found out that even with F's, my eighth grader will move on to high school, even with poor performance in F's. So I'm currently in the process to hopefully be able to file a motion to reevaluate the custody that's been given, but she was given 100% custody. She, in a lot of ways, I've learned a lot through the postings from this parental alienation charity and podcast that has really helped me understand and frame what's been going on. Because in a lot of ways, I feel like I used to say Twilight Zone. It might date me a little bit, but I think now I'm going to start using the reference of Black Mirror episode, because it really feels like I live in a Black Mirror episode where the truth has become lies and lies have become the truth. And it would be simple for a system to really do the hard work of coming and meeting and spending actual time with the family. There's lots of people in our lives over the last 20 years that can see what's happening, understand the aggressive nature. But the court system operates very much in a nice type setting where men came home angry from work and drank and beat their wives. And that seems to be, while it probably still exists, seems to be kind of a minority of the situation that goes on now. I've learned through domestic violence classes that the majority of domestic violence situations are mutually abusive. I have 3 different therapists who've educated me on the fact that I had been being abused for 20 years plus. As a man, that was hard to accept at first. I didn't really believe it. It took months for me to really get my head around it and understand the ways that happens. And it was physical abuse, financial, emotional, stonewalling, and withdrawal of emotion and care. And so that existed the entire time. I know I'm trying to approach it really from a place of forgiveness. I still love my children's mother. I want her to get well. To some extent, she understands that she has mental illness. She's not really willing to accept the full extent of it. And the court enables her in a lot of ways to just make a scapegoat out of me. Everything I do is seen as malicious, with malicious intent. I am a religious person. I prayed for the children and let my daughter know I prayed for her. She entered a photo of the children in the chapel that I had sent her as evidence in a court proceeding to say that it had malicious intent. And no, I show that to 100 people, and 100 people agreed that that's a caring father praying for his children. And the court seems to twist very normal things. They've made rulings that I shouldn't give the children gifts, a ruling that I cannot give them gifts. So I still have their Christmas presents. I've been driving around with them in my car and hoping for the opportunity to give them to them. In particular, my 7-year-old daughter asked for a dollhouse that was $80, and my wife sent me a picture of it, asked me to buy it for her. Her relationship with her father is very much transactional, and that's how she frames it. Like, her parents' marriage was volatile in certain ways, but she puts that on a pedestal and sees that as an example of a good relationship. But her mother did a lot of the pouting and stonewalling and would do the silent treatment for days on end if she disagreed. And then her father would reluctantly relent. And so that enabling pattern that I'm starting to understand existed very much. And she sees that as a model of a decent marriage. So the transactional relationship with her father started to be the one that she was encouraging her children to have with me, especially my two daughters. My 12-year-old asked for a costume last Halloween, and her and I are allowed to talk if she chooses to. The courts allowed a lot of the decisions to be made by children. And just like they're doing their homework, if they're allowed to decide whether or not they want to go to bed on time or do their homework, and I was the same way as a child, they'll decide not to and not understand the repercussions. So it's a silly idea to think we're going to allow children to make lifelong changing and lifelong affecting decisions that they're not at an age to understand or make a good decision for themselves. So I think that's pervasive in society today. You see a lot of kids that eat nothing but cheese pizza or mac and cheese. And the parents go, that's all they want. And the truth is, that's all that you feed them. So I have children that love broccoli. My oldest son, his favorite food is broccoli, and he can't understand why in movies and television they give broccoli a bad name. Well, he was served broccoli and never, given an opportunity for something else. I learned by a very wise pediatrician that said, expect your children to play with one meal, ignore one meal, and eat one meal. And that's normal. So kids do that, and it's okay if they ignore a meal and go to bed hungry, as most of us did as children on occasion, because when they wake up in the morning, they'll be happy to eat whatever nutritious meal you put in front of them. So along with that, there's other decisions that are good for children. And sometimes you're made out to be the bad parent if you stand by that. But I very much believe that I'm not trying to just let the children make all the decisions for themselves. As a father, it's my responsibility, both parents really, but certainly I can only control myself. And as a father, I want to do best by them, whether they agree with it or not. And part of that is I think they should have a relationship with their father. So I asked my daughter, please, I'm happy to buy you this costume for Halloween, but this is the only time you've talked to me in however many months it had been at that time. And I said, so I'm happy to buy this costume for you. If you're going to answer my calls, we do Facebook Messenger, call me back. And she agreed to that. And no sooner did I give her the costume that I have not heard from her since. The two oldest children do not participate in the visits that I'm allowed. It is up to them. The person will ask them, and they'll be in the car at the drop off. And she'll say, she'll turn around, do you want to? Now, meanwhile, behind closed doors, she's discouraged them to participate. One of the clips that this podcast had on very succinctly phrased it, and I used that to share with the therapist, and I'm thinking of sharing that very verbiage with the court as well, because it's exactly what's going on in my situation, where the kids are being discouraged and they only know their mother. They've seen how their father can be taken out of their lives, but most of what's going on, they may never understand, or certainly won't understand until they're adults. Right. People tell me that all the time. When they're adults, same thing happened with my dad and me. But when I was adult, I realized my mom had lied. And that brings me, no consolation, because you're missing times now that are so valuable. And I had always wanted to be a dad. So it hurts that this is happening. I have to constantly remind myself that it's important for me to be the best father that I can be for when I am given the chance to do so.
So thank you for sharing that. And there's so many amazing points in there about the reality of the alienating parents' behaviors and their tactics and their strategies and the fear that they instill into the children. So talk with us a little bit about, is a divorce final?
The divorce has been final for 9 months now, about maybe 10 months even.
So in the final divorce settlement, what was the custody arrangement at that time?
She's given temporary custody 100%.
And did you have any parenting time?
I'm allowed to have supervised parenting time. And so that 3, 4 months after the divorce, I lost my job, largely because I worked for a mission-based religious organization. That, perception of me changed when I'm no longer a married man. And to whatever extent that's changed my situation completely, I have these order of protections and domestic violence charges that make it difficult. One of the charges stemmed from me calling my father-in-law uh, and talking with him. They claim that was an attempt to get a message to her. It was really to talk to my father-in-law that I've known for 25 years. He's going through advanced Parkinson's, and so he's rather unable to help, but also unwilling in a lot of ways. Also, during last year around this time, my wife was allowing me to see the children, and they've since threatened her to take away the children from her if she continued to do that. So they made it really impossible for us to communicate. A lot of it's very confusing. The judge is somewhat new in her role, but even so, they make a lot of decisions that just don't have any practical common sense. So we're allowed to discuss the children, but they've threatened her in a way that now they'll take away the children if she talks to me. So she's cut off communication altogether. She's still in the house that we both own. The children are there, which is fine. I've asked the court to just allow us to keep the house till the children are 18, but the court has disagreed with that idea and is forcing her to sell the home or refinance it, which she is financially incapable of. So they may force the sale of this home. We live in an area in Arizona, a rich city it's the neighborhood I grew up in. I was lucky to afford the home through a family friend, and now we're priced out of this neighborhood. So if the kids get removed from this home and they can only move 90 miles or so away, they're definitely not going to grow up in the same affluence that they do now or a home. So it just makes no practical or financial sense, but that's the way the court has awarded over $100,000 to her lawyer. And the way they're going to get that is through the sale of the home, and the proceeds that go to me or I'll be given to the lawyer. So they're very much motivated to destroy families. Absolutely. But she still has all my property because of the orders of protection. Everything my dad gave me uh, in inheritance. My father passed away, and my grandparents passed away. Everything they ever gave me is there. My yearbook, my childhood high school yearbooks are there. All my clothes, everything I own. I mean, of course, my children. But a lot of that I just haven't fought for in court because I went through it without a lawyer. I still have hopes of reconciling this relationship at some point. The signs with my wife were always there. None of it was a surprise. The 10 years we dated through our 20s, all of this was evident. You just hope for the best, hope that people will grow up, hope that things will get better. And the truth is, all the things that are happening now were there. It's come to no great surprise to family members, but all of that only makes it harder. I've asked many women to reach out to her. They're all unwilling to. They say things like, we're scared of her. We're scared of what she'll do. My brother and his wife tried to reach out, and she called the police and told them that she was being abused, which is also untrue. But a police department from a different city then reached out to my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, and asked her about it. And it freaked them out so much that they blocked her. My sister-in-law will no longer talk to her. My sister-in-law has her own things going on in her life and in her health. And so that only exacerbated her situation and made it worse too. So it's hard to even ask them now to, hey, try and maintain a relationship with the children. Their grandmother, they have lots of cousins and aunts and uncles on this side. She's alienated all of them from it as well. She won't let them have contact with them except in very limited ways that she oversees. The phone conversation I have with my daughter, the 7-year-old who is willing to call me, she monitors it. She sits over the video call the entire time. I'll ask my daughter what she's been up to, and she looks up to the corner to see if it's okay to answer questions like, how was school? What park did you go to? She tries to claim in court that I'm asking what park so I can stalk them. And I mean, it's just trying to have a conversation with a 7-year-old is difficult enough, that without all your motives being made malicious. So now I sit there kind of in silence now, in fear of how it's going to be interpreted by her. And the court's just really unwilling to recognize what I've been trying to say. So I'm also at the point in court where I don't even want to defend myself, because every time I defend myself and say, oh, I'm a good guy, it's like, well, if you were a good guy, you wouldn't have to say you're a good guy. And that's a direct quote from my wife. I said, okay, I mean, that's one way to think of things. And we just live in a world now where the truth is really malleable. You can distort a lot of things because it's your truth. She'll say things like my truth. And that's a total distortion of what truth actually is. There is a truth. And even the judge participates in this crazy way of thinking. My very first court date was over video more than 2 years ago now, when this all first started. I had a lawyer at the time, and it was a female lawyer, and she got into a 10-minute argument over the definition of objective versus subjective. I said nothing that whole time. I just sat there like bewildered by this. And this judge, Amy Kalman is her name, Maricopa County Superior Court judge. And she gets really emotional, very unprofessional. The lawyer shut the laptop at the end of the argument, at the end of the court hearing, turned to me and said, that judge hates me. And I said, clearly, I have no idea why. I can only speculate, assume. I can only assume why. But she had made predetermined feelings about the situation before ever hearing any of the case, any of the evidence. Dad's bad, mom's good. Even to the extent when I brought up the drinking and alcohol abuse that clearly exists, she went so far as to say, alcohol is legal, she's allowed to drink. The only saving grace was that in the law it's written that if someone makes that allegation, it has to be taken seriously. Otherwise she would have probably ignored it completely, but has ignored it very much so, to the extent that I have no idea what's happening in the home now. It's typical of people with that problem. I'm not going to go so far as to make labels. I try and shy away from that now, but it's common for them to isolate and start to do a lot of that behavior in secrecy. When I was at the house, I felt like I could be there and protect the children. But in a lot of ways, I live in a lot of fear now. I try not to, but there's a level of fear. Statistically speaking, children in single mother households do not do very well. It's like 70% of children in juvenile delinquency, adult prison, 80% of rapists were all from single mother homes. In comparison, the statistics on single father homes actually hold up similar to two-parent households. So I just know they're at great risk, and the court's largely ignoring that reality.
So it sounds like 2 of the 4 don't want to communicate at all. Your older daughter wants to communicate when it benefits her. Your younger daughter tries. What has the courts implemented as far as reunifying you with the children? I know you mentioned prior to this that there's something going on with visitation and parenting time.
So the path forward is for me to have regular visitation, to see a therapeutic interventionist. I was going to see her and had a couple visits with her and the children. I had my concerns about the financial constraints. The relationship with that therapeutic interventionist and I had deteriorated to the point where she has lied to the court, said that I don't think there was any progress being made, which is absolutely inaccurate. I said, surely just the fact I can sit in the same room with the children here is progress. The 2 older children are reluctant to have any meetings with me. So instead of requiring it, they just say, well, if they don't want to meet with you, they don't have to meet with you. So her position now, a year or so later, is to remove herself from the case. She filed a motion to remove herself from the case. I then had to spend, every time I file a motion, it's extremely difficult. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm not an idiot either. I got great grades and was in advanced placement classes through school. I have my pilot's license, which was extremely rigorous, both physically and intellectually. That being said, the court filing motions is extremely difficult. It takes you all day at court. It's extremely onerous and difficult. This is in Arizona. That's really my only experience. I can see why these lawyers charge a lot of money to do it, just because the stress and the headache of filing a motion. But I filed a couple. One of them here was in disagreement to what she had said, but my wife will call her and make allegations, and it becomes fact. if I say something, they're requiring me to have proof of it. So she even made me sign something and then said that I had told them about the therapy I was going through. I've had 3 different individual counselors now. Even before the court thing, I was seeking counseling. It's what led me to understand abuse and how it works. When I even made the vague mention of what my therapist understands to be true, they determined that I brainwashed my therapist. So it required me to get a different therapist. So I have these court ordered domestic violence classes, and I'm actually seeing a new therapist that's from that setting. She does the group, and she saw what stress and distraught, and I mean, frankly, I was crying one day, and she asked if I wanted to do individual counseling, and I do now. And so she's uniquely qualified as well, and she's come to the same conclusion. But the court decided that I need to see one that they decide on. So she recommended a very expensive, all of them were very expensive in the in North Scottsdale offices type of overhead that requires them to charge 300. They want retainers, both of them. The therapeutic interventions wants $1,000 retainers. So we paid her over $5,000 already, and she blew through it with 2 meetings and then wants to tell me how much she's done for free. Surely that's all arbitrary. They don't understand what real work is. It's like you sit and write something for 10 minutes and you think it's an hour of work. Meanwhile, most of the rest of the world's out there digging ditches and mowing lawns in the heat. But that's what this has become about. So she wants to remove herself from the case. She had me meet with a guy. I paid him hundreds of dollars. He would refuse to meet with me in person. I said, well, I'd prefer that. I just feel like if you meet me in person, it's harder for you to be, even the court cases that you can video in, I go there in person because I want them to have to see me in person and look me in the face. Um, even physically, none of it makes sense. I don't even want to get into that, but there's like a lot of common sense that's just being ignored in the situation that most people just find it bewildering. A lot of people say they can't understand what's going on. Certainly people that have seen, one lady recently from church reminded me that on an Easter Sunday, she witnessed my wife berating me using the F word because I had left mass with 2 of the younger children, and she was stuck inside with the other 2. And I had completely forgot about it. I think as men, a lot of times we just try and forget about it so we can move on. My wife, I'll speak specifically, I don't want to generalize, but she tends to remember every little thing. And whether I left the toilet seat up or any other travesty. I used to get in trouble for spraying my cologne on the wrong way. Apparently, maybe listeners don't know this, but you're supposed to spray it in the air and then walk through it. I was spraying a squirt directly, which is a no-no. Hopefully, if I've imparted any wisdom today, there is a proper way to put on cologne. But all of these atrocities rank on the same level. Like there's no nuance to it. And even if it happened 20 years ago when we first started dating or happened last week, it all leads to he's a monster. I'm the best person in the world and I've never done anything wrong. I can't recall a time she's ever apologized for anything. It used to be funny, little banter, for her to not apologize or to distort the truth. I take her camping. A lot of women haven't been camping, and you take them camping and make an enjoyable experience for the family. I've taken her camping maybe 15, 20 times over 20 years. And every time, this is the first time you've taken me camping. You've never taken me camping. And it used to be a cute joke that now I kind of look back on with different eyes. And it's like, reality is just easily distorted.
Yeah.
You get in the habit of doing that. And first it's under the guise of a joke. But now this has turned so serious. Family members will say, oh, she's evil. She's been planning this the whole time. I don't believe any of that. I think people are sick. Mental health is a real crisis in this country. Unfortunately, she's battling like real demons. She's gone so far as to tell me she sees demons. There's a good person with a good heart there that feels very hurt. And in return, her response is to cause as much hurt outwardly. And I think in a lot of ways we accept that in society, especially from the fairer sex, where like get even. I was listening to a comedian the other day. She says one of her favorite things is revenge. And it's a sick society, really. So you have these systems that are sick, the court system, the child protection system, they're all very sick and not willing to do the hard work of like, let's sit down, let's meet this family, let's spend an evening or an afternoon with the entire family, see what the dynamic looks like. It's easy to spend an hour on the phone and just say lies, but it's very hard if you spend, especially a surprise visit, something like that. None of that has ever happened in this case. Nothing, no real in-person visits. The therapeutic interventionist has done that. And I guess to answer your question, that's the path they've given me, to then go see this guy individually. But he has now said he's unwilling to see me. I complained about the cost. I complained about the cost. They gave me a deadline to give him $1,000, give the therapeutic interventionist her $1,000 retainer. We talked on the phone and agreed to 700. She said you need to pay it by Monday. She does Zelle. I said, well, Zelle is an institutional banking system. I don't have it. I can PayPal or Venmo. She says I have Venmo. So I had to move money into the Venmo account. That took 2 days. And so she said 7 a.m. I think the money took time to hit. I did it on Sunday. It posted to her Venmo on 9 a.m. on Monday. So, and we had agreed on 700. She neglected to say that in her response to the court. She just that morning got up and wrote a response to the court that she would like to withdraw. She had already said that at the last hearing, but the judge gave me time. I'm out of work. I've been claiming a little unemployment, but the unemployment I get every week is less than the cost of the visit with the children. So it's all very prohibitively expensive. I really, truly believe I could have some shared visitation right now if I had about $1 million to put towards this case. And it would be no less than that. I've already spent $150,000. It got me nowhere. It's like nickel and diming. They charge you $5,000 here, $10,000 retainer there. And I just got to the point where it's like the real cost. I talked to other men who've been in this situation. The real cost to get nothing done is $500,000. Get some sort of attention. It's $1 million plus. So you need $1 million plus, and that's just lawyer fees. And then you can have the type of attention, the type of vicious lawyer like she has. I don't know what her bill is, but her father was a physician. He's financially wealthy. So she asks, like I said, her relationship with him is very transactional. So she just goes to him for money. And part of this has allowed her maybe she has 2 siblings. And part of this, I think, is motivated because she's able to get more of an inheritance out of him by pleading, the destitution of a failed marriage. So my only path forward to see these children is to jump through these hoops that then they close on me. So I'll see what happens if they remove these 2, and then I really have no path forward. I was told by one of these lawyers at one point, if the children get suspended or get an F or a D, that's the only way you can really make a change in the circumstance. I now have the report card from last semester where they got D's and F's. My son in 3 of his 7 classes got F's, all like math, science, English, all the important ones. I was able to participate in a teleconference via video with some of his teachers, but it took me a long time to get that right. They went back and forth on whether or not I was even allowed to, but it clearly says I'm supposed to be updated regularly about the children, and I'm not. I'm not getting any information. But I was able to schedule my own parent-teacher conferences. Turns out she didn't participate in them at all. She seems not concerned at all about their failing grades. And the children really aren't, because there's no accountability for them. All of the teachers were unaware of their situation. So I made the teachers aware. Several of them were very kind and understood. One of the teachers, she was going through a divorce as well and had an 11-year-old son. So once I made them aware of it, they very much, I think, had a little more sympathy for what the kids are going through. So I'm trying to participate as best I can. In a lot of ways, I'm scared too, because even participating in that way, I'm yet to file this motion with the report card because I'm scared that it'll upset her. A lot still she has control over whether or not the kids call me, see me, talk to me. And then she has all my property. I was given one of the vehicles, and she has the registration has lapsed. She won't give me the spare key, the registration renewal, the title for the car. But I can't, I've asked for it, but she's cut off all communication now. So I can't even really ask for it without going to the court and filing a motion for this stuff. But then I think she'll be so pissed off, like she'll throw away some of my property. Like I'm scared of that. And I hate, it's made me become far less materialistic. Like I hate because that's so far down the road of things that are important, but it's a reality. It's all my jewelry, like ring, my father's pinky ring, a pocket watch that's been in the family for generations, every suit that I own, my cowboy boots, my hat, like my stuffed animals. The children showed up to the first visitation with one of my childhood stuffed animals, and it was so cute. And I'd given it to my son Joseph, my son, who's the 9-year-old about to be 10. And my daughter's like, well, we just thought that he missed you and you probably missed him. It was an old doll from the 90s, My Buddy. Maybe some people will remember. I had a commercial that was catchy. But I said, that's great. I did. Like, thank you, children. That really touched my heart that you'd bring my stuffed animal. And they said, if you want them, you can keep them. I said, well, have you been taking good care of them? And my son said, yeah. And I said, well, I'd like you to continue to take good care of them if you want to. And he's like, yeah. So, I mean, that was really special. I live for these children. I'm not like, I sacrificed everything. I'd worked 2 to 3 jobs. My wife has never worked. Her father supported her, and then I supported the family. I was happy and proud to have a traditional stay-at-home wife, but I would work 2 to 3 jobs at a time to do that. I had a business that I ran, washing sidewalks in the middle of the night, and then had the day job at a financial institution. And, a lot of that became pressure on the marriage, and I'd come home and say, I'm exhausted. Is there any way like I could get some relief, some help, or just, typical marital stuff? And it became then a competition, whether who worked harder, and to some extent, I regret even engaging in that because men and women, mothers and fathers are complementary. And the minute you engage in who's more important, but it's a battle that's been going on in society for longer than I've been alive. The battle of the sexes. They used to refer to it a lot, right? And it's such a distortion of the reality of what's real, which is that the 2 parents are complementary. All the studies, all the statistics, everything shows that. There's no really way around it. But we live in a world that wants to pick one side better than the other, one's more important than the other, and it's just not accurate. So unfortunately, that's a lot of the things that led to the deterioration of the relationship. My wife sees the kids as like pawns, kind of a property that validates her existence. She shelters them in a way where like the bus stop is right near the home. It's one house away from our home, but the children never take the bus. She will drive them late to school or otherwise, and then be there to pick them up. She says they need me too. And these children that are 14 and 12 can take the bus home, but they've been enabled not to, which would empower them. Learning to take the bus empowers you as a child, makes you more independent, but she doesn't see it that way. There's such an extension of her feelings. And then a lot of it is just based on feelings. She just wants to react from an emotional standpoint. And the truth is feelings lie to us, feelings lie to you, and happiness is a choice. A lot of us, before we learn, we think other people make us happy. This guy cut me off in traffic. He made me mad. But people cut you off in traffic. It's going to happen. When it happens, you have a choice to either be angry about it or, it's like a choice that you make, and I started to learn that through a lot of the alcohol. I recommend anyone who is battling a loved one with an alcohol problem to seek out Al-Anon. It is the only place I've found that has like a message of forgiveness, acceptance, understanding, instead of like, let's get angry at people. So I mentioned that to a few people. I think a lot of people don't know it really even exists, but it's a support group for people who have loved ones with addictions, and is a great resource when there's really nothing else out there that can help you.
Jeff, any final thoughts for our listeners that are going through this, that are being alienated from their children, whether they're mothers or fathers, grandparents, siblings?
I'd say just continue to try. Like, don't give up on seeing them. Find different avenues or ways to, not in an aggressive way, but just to be there. And then for men, like really avoid, like this, the suicide rate is so up on men. Every week I'm hearing about a man who'll commit suicide because of being in this situation. It's understandable to an extent, but really it's important, I think, to just stay the course. It's really terrible what's happening now, but these children will need you in their lives at some point, and it may be way farther down the road than you're willing to accept. But for all grandparents, siblings, the other thing I really wish of the other family members close to, that they would make an effort. And regardless of retaliation that the other parent may do, make an effort, especially if they're teenage children, like to directly reach out to them. Send them a letter, send them cards, let them know you're still wanting to have a relationship with them. It'll go a long way, I think, for when they do have the opportunity to speak out or to reach out. So make that regular, not just once a year or once every other year, but like a monthly, send them, knock on the door. Their grandmother will knock on the door and she will not answer. She'll have them all stay quiet and not answer. But if she's not at home, they'll answer the door and they'll speak to their uncle or their grandmother and have a great conversation that then when she comes home is completely different. So I would just say find those opportunities when you can talk to the children, keeping lines of communication open, send a letter, send a card, and don't just write them off. Don't just write these kids off. It's easy to do to save your own peace of mind, but put your peace of mind on the back burner. And these kids don't have a choice. A lot of kids 12, 14, and they want to say, well, those kids made their choice. They're deciding not to. No, they're not. Those kids are in a fight or flight survival mode, and they're just doing what they think is best to survive. They have to live with that parent. And so they're just doing what's best for them at that time. And keep that in mind. We're the adults and you can only control yourself. So wish you the best of luck. Anyone who would like to reach out to me, I hope to have a YouTube channel you can communicate with me through. The number One Man with Courage on YouTube, One Man with Courage at gmail.com. I'm happy to talk, to help, to listen. The quote comes from One Man with Courage is a majority. So it's sometimes attributed to Andrew Jackson, but they don't know really where the quote came from. But I found it somewhat empowering that one man with courage can be a majority. I think that speaks to one man, one woman, one person with courage is a majority. So be that person. And thank you for all you've done too to help the cause.
Jeff, thank you for joining the Fractured Families podcast.
Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Fractured Families podcast. I hope our conversation has provided you with support, understanding, and actionable insights to help you navigate your own family challenges. Remember, healing is a journey, and reaching out for help is a sign of strength. You're not alone. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more families in need. You can contact me on social media at Parental Alienation is Real and visit our website for additional resources and ways to get involved. Stay strong, stay connected, and keep fighting for the family bonds that matter most. Until next time, take care and stay resilient.